All right, guys, we're back for another insightful analysis from Watch It Philly. I should be nominated for a Nobel Prize in economics for what I'm going to call the cash value theory of healthcare in the United States. And what I'm going to explain to you here is the biggest scam in the history of the United States. My theory is this: the amount of money you pay in cash as copays and deductibles for medical services in the United States is basically what the service is actually worth. I'm going to state this again for emphasis. The amount of money you pay in cash as copays and deductibles for medical services in the United States is basically what the service is actually worth. Health insurance premiums generally pay for fabricated prices and are a corruption premium that allows health insurance in this country to be run like a mafia protection racket. The majority of premiums paid for health insurance in this country go to corruption and are essentially wasted in the process I will describe here. First, some background that you'll never be reminded of by our politicians. In the 1950s, this wasn't a problem. People did not complain endlessly about health insurance. People did not need to use GoFundMe to finance their medical care. Medical bankruptcy was mostly non existent. Companies paid their employees health insurance. It was not a big deal. It was a small amount, a fringe benefit. Healthcare providers behaved themselves for the most part. They might have been concerned if they acted like they do now with price gouging, the government might step in. Over time, they gradually realized the government wasn't going to do anything about it, a process they helped along with bribes, campaign contributions. All, the, all this while every industrialized democracy except the United States had universal health care, some for decades. Germany has had universal health care since 1883 under Otto von Bismarck's Health Insurance Act. That's 1883, not 1983. Today, only people in the United States need to deal with this. It wouldn't be as bad if healthcare corporations behaved themselves like they did in the 1950s, but we have no such luck. The American people didn't start complaining until things got out of hand. As hospital price gouging got worse in recent years, consumers complained hospitals refused to disclose their prices ahead of time and then price gouged them into bankruptcy. $100 for an aspirin is not uncommon. Tens of thousands of dollars in medical bills for a minor medical issue is not uncommon. Hospitals refused to disclose their prices ahead of time. Hospital industry associations interviewed about it claimed hospitals didn't really know what their prices were. And what other industry does a supplier claim to not know what their prices are or refuse to disclose prices? The only motive for this is fraud. In any other industry, this will be called what it is: fraud. After victims complained after being left sick, broke, and homeless, some states passed laws that said hospitals must disclose their prices to the public. Not to be outdone, in states where hospitals are required to disclose their prices, they made it as confusing as possible. Now, when someone has a heart attack, they can go online and compare hospital prices before the ambulance arrives. The government did nothing about controlling costs, and hospitals continue to be allowed to price gouge. The hospital industry continued to blame the high prices on employee wages and charity care rather than fraud. But one hospital's executives got caught equity stripping hospital properties, i.e., selling the property, pocketing tens of millions in cash, then renting the property back to the hospital at exorbitant rent, then blaming employee wages for high prices, then closing the business altogether after bankrupting it. I've included a link to another YouTube video that details an example of the scam. Of course, this type of looting is legal in the United States, but something like petty shoplifting is regularly prosecuted. It's a high level crime against the American people and needs to be stopped. Now, here's how the scam of healthcare works in the United States. It's very similar to a mafia protection racket in which you need to pay someone to protect you when they are the ones causing the problem to begin with, after you already paid your basic expenses in cash. A smart street gang would use two separate people to facilitate the fraud and make it seem legitimate, and the process works the same way in healthcare by having two separate actors perpetrating the fraud. First, you have a bad actor, the hospitals, allowed to charge whatever they want at a time when you can't realistically give consent. The other bad actor, the fake protector in on the scheme, is the insurance companies, whose role I will explain in a minute. The first part of the fraud process is collecting the cash value, which is my cash value theory. I'll explain how this process works in a hospital setting. Hospitals charging $100 for an aspirin is not uncommon. $300 for a bag of saline, for example, which is purified salt water, $2,000 for a couple hours in a hospital room billed as a complete day. It's whatever outrageous thing they can dream up out of thin air. Consequently, bills add up fast. If you have a broken arm, for example, you can easily get a bill for $2,000. If you have a high deductible health insurance plan of a $1,000 deductible and a copay of $250, you pay $1,250 in cash. Does anyone really believe it's harder today to take an x-ray and cast an arm than it was in 1950? If you pay $1,250 in cash to fix a broken arm, you already paid way more than the actual cash value of the service before insurance even kicks in. How much could it possibly be worth? It's decades old technology. Figure a doctor's wages are realistically worth $160 an hour. $25 is a realistic price for some plaster, and maybe $100 for facility costs for an hour or two. You already paid in cash more than what the service was worth. For more serious procedures such as heart attacks, it's not uncommon to receive a bill for $20,000 or more even after insurance is applied to the bill. If you price out the medical tourism costs of the same procedure overseas, you will see that it comes to right in the amount of $20,000. So once again, you're paying the actual cash value of the procedure or more, while all the insurance and everything else is nothing but corruption. But because hospitals bribe the government to let them do whatever they want, they can make up whatever price they want and have the court system refuse to call it what it is, which is fraud. So if you get a huge hospital bill, the courts will take the side of the hospital and make excuses that you signed for treatment or some other nonsense the hospital posted their prices online, even if it was in hieroglyphics. The court system is rigged against the working class in favor of hospitals. Now we get back to the cash value theory that should earn me a Nobel Prize in economics to see if it holds true in other healthcare settings. Actually, I'm not likely to win the Nobel Prize because it's from Sweden, and nobody in Europe would believe a healthcare system could possibly be this corrupt. But don't forget to hit the thumbs up button below and subscribe. To prove the theory, do we see the same process in other healthcare settings where the copays and deductibles are approximately equal to the value of the service rendered? Let's look at another healthcare setting, the regular doctor visit to your primary care physician. Before even considering huge deductibles, a copay of $40 is fairly common. Sometimes it's a little bit less, sometimes it's a little bit more depending on your insurance, but let's use $40 as an example. You pay your doctor the mandatory $40 copay, which they require in cash when you get there. An average doctor visit is 15 minutes, which is the time the doctor actually spends with you in the office. The doctor does 4 such visits in an hour, earning $160 an hour in copays, which astonishingly is about what they earn per hour. Maybe they would bill your insurance company $300. Then later you get billed for the deductible, which can be up to the first $5,000 a year or more. So you wind up paying the full amount anyway and are forced to pay the $260 difference. That cash goes towards overhead and expenses, with the rest being extra profit for the doctor above the $160 an hour. So the insurance didn't really pay for anything. The example is a little bit oversimplified, but time and again, you'll find the same result. It begs the question, why am I buying insurance, especially at a high price of $700 a month or more, when it doesn't cover anything? So that brings us to the second bad actor in the protection racket, the insurance companies. Some providers won't even accept the insurance you have, or they play games with out-of-network surprise balance bills. So your $700 a month premium went nowhere but down a rat hole. The insurance premiums end up being pure corruption. The protection racket is you are usually going to pay about $700 a month for a high deductible plan and could easily be more than that. The deductible could easily be $1,000 to $5,000 a year and also have high copays. Again, what no politician ever mentions is in the 1950s, companies paid their employees' health insurance premiums either in full or at nominal cost, and deductibles were rare and or nominal. Insurance actually covered hospital bills in full. It was not a problem at that time, and it does not need to be a problem now. It's not technology that's causing the problem, it's corruption, fraud by industry executives, price gouging, and graft. The $700 or whatever premium you pay for health insurance is a complete waste and is a corruption premium that goes directly to bad actors in the system, namely hospital and insurance company CEOs and executives. It's a protection racket because the health insurance industry price gouges, which should be illegal. Then you pay $500 to $1,000 a month for insurance that isn't worth anything and should be unnecessary to begin with because you're paying the whole thing in cash anyway. If you refuse to cooperate and pay the health insurance extortion and you get sick, then the hospital will sue you for the full price gouging price, and the courts will refuse to call it what it is, which is fraud, and they'll let the hospital steal every cent you have or drive you into bankruptcy. It's the biggest scam in the history of the United States. Low-level corruption such as bribery of police or government clerks is exceedingly rare in the United States, but high-level corruption such as cash value healthcare, as I described here, drains the income of the American people and puts them at risk. People avoid getting desperately needed medical care just to avoid being victimized by the price gouging. The American people should not need to pay a protection racket for healthcare. Nobody elected corporations to run our government. The American people want universal health care, but we are being ignored by our government because they have been bribed by the health insurance industry. Beyond that, a law needs to be passed that prohibits healthcare providers from suing the working class. Laws need to be passed to stop hospital executives from looting and equity stripping hospital assets. The fraud and protection racket needs to be stopped. The bribery that is campaign contributions by corporations needs to be made into a felony. The rights of corporations should not be put above the rights and lives of the American people. Healthcare and insurance companies are playing games with the lives of the American people. To circumvent the endless denials from corporations and the right wing as to the wishes of the American people, there should be a national ballot question as to whether the American people want to mandate the government to implement a universal health care system.